right, welcome back to A Side, B Side podcast. So normally we kind of jump in and we talk about what we've done this week and what we've watched. And this week is a little different.
Yeah, we have a unique opportunity this week, and it doesn't feel like the boxes that I packed are that important when compared to the boxes we're about to unpack.
So this week we have a unique opportunity. Adam, you lived in this community. I am still in this community in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And Bowling Green is unique in that it's a big city in a small town. Mm-hmm. So it has enough to where other people come to Bowling Green to do things, but it's still small enough that you don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah. You go to the store and you see people you know. You drive down the street and you're at a four-way stop or the stoplight, you look over and you recognize somebody in a car. It's big, small, or small, big. It's a bit of both.
Right. But also you can go several months without seeing somebody that you know. Mm-hmm. So it's very big, small town or small, big town. It's not a Sam Hunt type of a breakup in a small town and you're automatically in the same circles.
Right.
But you can be very easily.
Right. And it's not like I'll break up with you and could potentially never see you again, which luckily I live in a big town. So.
Right. So tonight we have an opportunity to talk to a local Bowling Green police officer about a case that happened here and spanned quite a bit of time. It spanned a time from both before you and I were here, while we were both here, and you have left and I am still here. So it's been an incredibly long time for this case.
And that's why I think tonight it'll be unique in that usually we do very different things. Mm-hmm. Like the A side and the B side, it's literally like a flip of a tape. You get an entirely different perspective. But tonight, the A side and the B side are both going to be focused on the same thing because of this unique opportunity. So that's exciting, a little scary, but when you have a unique opportunity, you have to take it.
All right, so we will be back, and I guess it's the B-A side-ish.
This is just when you hit record and you get the entire album on one side. That's
right.
We got the extra long cassette. We got the 120-minute cassette, so we got the whole album on one side.
It's the remix album.
Yeah, it's a mashup.
All right, so we're going to jump into it here in just a second.
Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I sure would like to make a podcast. I've got so much to say about blank. Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor, you really should. It is the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's absolutely free. All right, I'm going to tell you why it's so easy. Okay, so with Anchor, there's creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. And you can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Trust me, I'm so excited about this. You can be too. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started.
So this week is, I don't know if you want to call it a special treat, but we do have treat for you. And with us, I'm locally here in Bowling Green, and joining us from our local Bowling Green Police Force, Ronnie Ward. How you doing, Ronnie?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Brooke.
I have to say thank you so much for joining us on A Side, B Side podcast. I've known you for several years because through my other job, and you know how I am about true crime, and we've spent plenty of time talking about true crime.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time talking about new cases, old cases, just really anything that has of any particular interest.
Ronnie, when you found out about this podcast through another a coworker of yours, a friend of mine, I was really excited when you were like, yeah, absolutely, I would love to come on and talk about some cases.
Yeah, so I look at podcasts sort of as the swimming pool, and I was trying to figure out how to get to the diving board because I want in, and it's something that I just didn't feel like I could go out and spend the money on the equipment that I needed. Plus, then what am I going to talk about? Who wants to listen to me talk for however long it is? So I was just really just tickled. I think the stars aligned, and and it's headed us in the right direction.
I've mentioned this before, and I don't know if you've heard this, Ronnie. When I look at cases that I'd like to talk about on the podcast, I always try to find something that hasn't been known nationwide. And you brought this case to me, and I was like, I've never even heard of this, and this is a local case, and I've been here this entire time. So this perfectly fit into everything that we try to do here on the B side of A-Side B-Side podcast. And you brought us the case of Carol Neal.
Yes. Yeah, so this case, ironically enough, this happened, of course, before I was a police officer, but it was solved and adjudicated while I was a police officer. So the irony in all of this is that I knew Carol Neal personally before I was a police officer. Remember when she died, and it hurt our family because she was a good family friend. And so being able to see this, I'm not going to give away the ending, but being able to see what's happened, was really sort of just a breath of fresh air to our family. Mm-hmm. And I cannot imagine the feeling, the jubilant feeling to her family.
So Carol Neal was born here in Bowling Green on December 26th of 1967. And Carol met Leland Neal Jr. They married. I don't know exactly how long they were married, Ronnie. We tried to find that information out. We couldn't really get a hold of it, but we know they had to have been married at least 5 years because they had two beautiful boys. They had Zach and Cole. Zach was 5 and Cole 15 months.
Yeah, and we've just in researching the case, it's all of the things that you look at and say, well, I don't really think that was important. I don't think that was that big of a deal, but really it is, because all of the little things are what tie this case up into a nice, neat little bow.
Right.
And so you have to take into consideration when they met, where he proposed, to really figure out who did this.
Right. So like a lot of marriages, Ronnie, you've been married for a while now. Adam, you were married. So, a lot of it happens. I've been married, things sour, people separate. And Carol and Leland separated on July 31st of 1988. And then Carol, like happens, filed for divorce about a month later. In October, they were able to actually come to a custody agreement about their two boys, and they were scheduled for a court hearing on November 12th of 1998 to set a date for their divorce proceedings. Well, they never made it to that court hearing because on Tuesday, November 11th, Tony Sawyer, who we will get into him, Ronnie, a bit, he arrived at Carol's house about 7:20 in the morning to check on her. Now, the police report, I was able to peruse that. He drove past the house and he saw her car in the driveway. So
yeah, let me just make one minor correction. It was actually November the 10th, and and yes, he drove by her house, but he admittedly said that he drove by her house every day just to check on her. And that particular day, he noticed her car was still in the driveway. And so when he saw the car in the driveway, that was unusual to him because I guess that every other day that he had driven by her house, her car was not. And so because her car was still there, he backed up and pulled in the driveway to check on her.
So he gets out and he notices that the back storm door is open. So he enters and he finds Zach and Cole alone in the house. And Zach says to him, I want to show you something. And he leads him into the living room. Now, Ronnie, I've never been at a crime scene. I've watched plenty of movies. I know they use chocolate syrup. I know they use cough syrup. But to see it in real life, Tony said he saw what looked like massive amounts of cough syrup spilled everywhere. As a police officer, is that normal? Does that sound right? Would the average person look at that and think that?
Well, I'm going to tell you, when you see that scene, so we talk about in police work, we talk about the totality of the circumstances. So you see the room as it is. Now I want you to picture the room. There's a couch in the room. There are no couch cushions. Okay, the couch cushions are gone.
Mhm.
There's a coffee table in the room and it is turned over.
Mhm.
And so then there's a large stain in the floor. There's a large stain on the couch. There is a stain on the ceiling. There's stains on the walls. And so I think that a person could look at this and say, something's not right here.
Mhm.
But I'm going to tell you, hours later, after blood has dried and blood has darkened, it could easily resemble another fluid other than blood. But here's what you've got to take into consideration. People are not expecting the worst. People
Mhm.
don't open the door and walk into a room expecting to be met with what has happened. Now they've walked into the scene of a murder.
Mhm.
And so in your mind, you have to, sometimes your brain just won't let you realize what am I looking at?
Well, and I guess that's exactly what happened to Tony, because he thought that cough syrup had spilled everywhere, and he spent almost 2 hours trying to clean up this mess, thinking that Carol was going to return at some point in time. And when she didn't, he called her mom looking for her. And then her mom told him to call 911.
That's right. He spent some time in the house and then realizes she's not coming back, or and what really is happening is he's also searched the house for her, the attic, every possible place that she could be, and her car is still there. So he knows that she did not drive away, but she's not coming back. And then at that point he starts thinking something is way off here, and I need to get some other people involved. So he calls her mother.
And then her mom, of course, says, call 911.
Yes. She tells him right away, and he does. He calls the police right away, and he sort of tells what's happening in the scene there, but really he's calling and reporting a missing person because she's not there, and he doesn't realize that something bad may have happened to her.
So Ronnie, I've got a part of that call, and I want to play it, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
What is your emergency? What's the problem, sir?
Okay.
Medical, fire, police, which is it?
Police.
Okay.
My name is Carol Neal, Neal.
What's the problem there, sir?
Okay, I came this morning. I'm her best friend, boyfriend. I came over this morning about 20 minutes after 7. Came to the back door. Her car was here. She's usually gone to school, and I'm take the kids to school and work. Come here, the back door's open. Knock on the door, and think she's here, but she's not. So wait a minute, and Zach, the little boy, comes to the back door. I said, Zach, where's mommy? And he said, I don't know. So she was gone when he woke up. So I go into, he said, come here, I want to show you something. So I go into the living room, and on the sofa, there's all kinds of stains. There's red stains, and it looks like cough syrup, but some of it looks like blood. There's spots on the wall. I've got it off, and I go to the back door here, and it looks like there's blood on the back wall. And another thing,
You saw these spots on the wall that look like blood, and you've already cleaned them up.
I'm saying because there's still some on the.
What's your name?
My name is Tony Sawyer, and her mother is on her way over.
And you've been there for 2 hours almost?
Well, I thought maybe she might have spilled cough syrup or something on it, but we don't know. But I just talked to her mom, and she said to call the police. Mom's on her way.
The door was unlocked?
The door was unlocked, and the thing about it, her ex-husband might have come. That's the first thing her mom said. It could have been her ex-husband, which is Lee Neal, might have come and done something. We don't know for sure. So her mom said to call, so she's on her way. And I don't know if she's in the police. She said to call the police. I guess she wants the police to come over here.
Yes, sir. But you got there at 7:20.
Yes, ma'am. And the kids are fine. Both the little boys are fine.
Let's talk about the very first thing he says. He says, I'm her friend or boyfriend. But I've read some articles, and her mom said, I didn't really know him. Is that crucial to this? Do we think crucial to this at this point in time?
Yes, it is absolutely crucial to how he portrays himself, because we don't know, obviously we don't know what Carol thinks or what Carol believes her relationship is. We later learn that it's not what Tony thought it was. We don't think anyway, from what we were told by other people. Tony would report himself to be a boyfriend, friend, really good friend. Carol would beg to differ that they were not in a romantic relationship to the point that where Tony thought it was, or she would consider Tony her boyfriend.
Now, he also said, and we've mentioned this, he spent 2 hours cleaning. That is not good.
No, it's not good. And, you know, we call that tampering with physical evidence, and so did the court. So that's really an issue with the fact that now this crime scene has been altered. Mm-hmm. It's been cleaned up. We don't, you know, that in lots of crime scene, there's more than one person is injured. Sometimes in the harming of one person, another person receives an injury. And so that you have two blood types in a scene. And that's what we're looking for in crime scene processing. We're trying to find where is it most likely that the suspect's blood would be while the victim's blood is here. And so this crime scene has been changed and forever changed. And you can't go back and recreate that because chemicals have been used to clean this up.
Now, you mentioned the blood, and the blood was everywhere. I mean, massive amounts of blood. So much blood, Ronnie, that the medical examiner just declared her deceased. There was not even a body, but there was so much blood that it was just stated there's no way that she's still alive.
Yes, they would say that the amount of blood loss, a person could not sustain life having lost this much blood. And so they would presume at that point in time that this person is dead.
Now, Tony mentioned in the call Carol's ex-husband, Leland. Was Leland located?
He wasn't right then. We made a phone call or two and was able to find him and bring him to Bowling Green. At the point in time that they got in touch with him, he was in Monticello, which was, a couple hours away driving distance from Bowling Green. And that was where he was living at the time. So he was home. And so we contacted him and had him come back to Bowling Green so we could talk to him.
Now, when he came in for an interview, it was noticed that he had some scratches on his face and on parts of his body, but he had an excuse, of course.
He did. On the left side of his face, he had some scratches. And I say the left side of his face because that's where the pictures are that are listed in the evidence. And he could have had others, but most notably on the left side of his face. And so his explanation for those scratches were that he was scouting for deer near his home, which is very near to the Daniel Boone National Forest.
Now, Ronnie, as we've said before, we've had plenty of conversations, and we know when a spouse or a significant other gets hurt, it's usually the spouse or that other person, right?
Well, you don't want to narrow the scope, right, to get to that person,
right?
But you can't rule them out right away. So you say, yes, that's a person that we absolutely would lean towards. Is because statistically, yes, it is, but you can't go so much that it takes away the broad view to open your eyes to say, what are the other possibilities to this? Because then that's why you start trying to say, all right, let's get alibis for where all of these folks were. And then we don't just take your word for it. Then we go verify those alibis. And so that is a key component, especially to this case, is let's find out everybody's alibis.
And that's one of those things where, and again, I'm coming at it from a very civilian standpoint, but you often hear in TV shows about how you have to let the evidence lead to the assumption as opposed to the assumption. Because if you make an assumption that maybe it's the husband, you can probably find circumstantial evidence that reinforces that idea. But if you look at the evidence, you have to trust the evidence first, even though statistically, as you said, it might be a spouse or a partner. The actual evidence is going to lead you to the right place more often than not.
Yes, and so the misnomer in lots of detective stories are that detectives figure out who did something, and then that's what they're pursuing, is that person. But what detectives actually do are they're fact finders. And so when they start gathering facts and they put all these facts together, then those facts lead to a person. And then at some point in time, they've got to say, there is no other way that this could have happened except for this person did this. And so, and unlike TV, we can't just browbeat someone into just because we think it's you. We can't say, it's absolutely you, and we're gonna prosecute you and try you and put you in prison because of what you've done. But the reality is that the facts have to take you to that point.
So this case, of course, this again happened November 10th of 1998. And in 1999, police learned that Tony had done something at a local church that was of interest.
Yeah, so Tony has a construction company, and police learned that he had poured a concrete slab for an area church here. And so they immediately thought, that's probably a really good way to dispose of a body, is to put it under a slab of concrete. And
Jimmy Hoffa.
That's where everybody's mind goes right away, is, well, that's, Jimmy Hoffa is supposedly, and so we know that's a really good way to dispose of the body. Well, what really makes that particular concrete slab so important, it was poured the week after Carol Neal disappeared. And so, again, we still want to try to figure out who this is, but we're running two directions now. We're running towards Tony Sawyer, and we're running towards Leland Neal, because facts in the case are popping up in both, and you can't make your mind up. So we go to this concrete slab, and the first thing they want to do is they make arrangements with some area cadaver dogs to come and work the pad to try to determine if in fact there is a body buried there. So the person with the dog says, you need to drill holes in the pad. Let's start there. And so they do. It has to go all the way through the slab into the dirt. They do that. The dogs show interest. Okay, so now we take it another step further. So they cut a square out of the concrete slab down to the dirt, and again the dogs show interest in this, and they're saying this so that it's not the dogs are not 100% indicating that, hey, there's a body here. They're just showing interest, so they have to keep pursuing that. So they end up digging up the entire slab, up to the point that the forensic examiner says that there's nothing here, and so we stop, and then of course the pad's replaced, but there was no human remains found in the concrete.
So again, it goes cold until 2003, when hikers find a part of a skull at Parker's Mountain in Daniel Boone National Forest. So the skull collected, and it's sent to the medical examiner, Dr. Emily Craig, to determine who the skull belongs to. So she says automatically it's a woman, probably a white female, but she has to do some more testing, correct?
Yes, that's right. She said that it was definitely a female, probably a white female, and that this person died from blunt force trauma to the head.
So then they want to get it tested to determine if it is in fact Carol Neal's skull, but the McCreary County Medical Examiner's Office doesn't have enough money. So
yes, that's, we would think in 2020, that's just bizarre, right? But you've got to realize that all of this testing is relatively new. It's expensive. Not many people are doing it. It's, this is the newest and greatest and latest. And so also it's risky. Not a lot of people at that point in time believe in it like they do now. Right now, it's ultimately, this is what's going to solve this case. But then, so put your mind in that time frame. And
one quick question.
Yeah.
For those of us that may not know McCreary County, this is a relatively rural, smaller area, right?
Oh, it is, and the towns are small. This is rugged countryside. This is logging. This is hikers, the deer hunter's paradise. So this is just for, you can look at an overview of the area, and it is just rough terrain. It's forest, it's dense, it's sparsely populated.
So that may factor into their budgetary concerns as well.
That's true. Yeah, you're talking about a tax base of probably not much. So yeah, there's lots of factors that come into play that they cannot get this tested because it's because of the monetary value in testing.
So the coroner in Bowling Green steps in and gets the judge executive to agree to pay for the DNA testing, $2,500 it cost at that time. And then it was, in fact, determined that this skull did belong to Carol Neal.
Yeah, it didn't take very long for them to, once the testing was paid for, the testing was done immediately. And it was determined very quickly that it belonged to Carol Neal.
So now we still have to figure out who killed Carol.
Yes. And so the location, again, we go back to the facts of the case. The location, just because Leland Neal lives in this area, doesn't mean that he did this. I mean, it's, you still have to take facts for what they are. However, this is going to slant your view a little because it's, there's some other things that come into play when we're talking about the exact area. The Parker's Mountain is kind of a big deal.
Parker's Mountain is a special place for Carol and Leland Neal because that's where Leland proposed.
That's right. That's right.
So now going back to the facts of the case, Leland lives within 20 miles of this area. This is where he used to hike quite frequently. And this is where he has proposed to Carol. So does this make the police lean even more towards Leland now?
It does. It still doesn't steer them away from where the facts are leading them. But keep in mind, we're looking for facts. And right now, the facts that are falling in front of you just are lining up towards Leland, because remember his alibi. His alibi is that he's looking for deer while Carol is dying, or at the point in time where she has gone missing. He's looking for deer, and he's looking for deer close to his home. And he's hiking that area of Parker's Mountain and the forest nearby.
So now Leland's car played a part in this investigation. Why was Leland's car investigated, and what happened?
Well, if you're going to remove a body from a scene, now we know at the scene there was evidence indicating that someone, whoever was bleeding in the living room, went out the back door. So that indicates that the person that was bleeding, that now is presumed dead, was not in that house again, had been taken out the back door. Well, then it would just logically be that they would leave from the house and be put into a car. So we would love to have that car. And so the car, we know, is going to have evidence of, I can't say 100% if I found your car with blood in it, I can't say 100% that you killed the person whose blood this is, but you know something about this because there's that person's blood in your car. So we really, really wanted to find that vehicle. So
were you able to find Leland's vehicle?
No, see, that's another part of this that we don't have that evidence. And so what we learned later is that a friend of Leland's was renting him some garage space, and Leland was working on vehicles. And one of the vehicles that he was working on was his own Toyota station wagon. He was putting a new motor in it. And so the motor was in, and he was working on some other things, getting it ready to be drivable. And then Carol Neal's skull is found. And as soon as Carol Neal's skull is found, that vehicle disappears. And so what we found out later is we have to presume that vehicle was crushed because it does not exist in any record that we can find.
So, Ronnie, we now have a crushed car, which is not a good thing. We now have scratches that we couldn't prove. We have a skull found near a skull found near a special place close to where Leland lived and right where he proposed. So this kind of gets now retired Detective Barry Rayleigh thinking, okay, I think this is the guy, right?
Yeah, it does. And so at some point in time, you've got to say, okay, we've got enough facts to head us in a direction where we can now let a grand jury or the Commonwealth Attorney's Office determine, yes, let's proceed with this. Let's move on this case now. And I think there's not everybody was convinced, and not everybody would say, yes, now's the time. But the person who was investigating the case said, yeah, I think we're there. Once he told his story, the detective told his story, Detective Rayleigh told his story, then others were like, this is the right thing. We need to move on this.
So I've watched way too many episodes of Law and Order, and that is a fictionalized version of this moment. But almost in every one of those episodes, there is that time when in the fictionalized universe, it's the police presenting the case to the district attorney. In reality, how is that decision made? Whose final call is it?
Yeah, so the Commonwealth Attorney is a heavy player in all of this to make the determination of yes, let's move this forward, because the reality is you can't keep coming back with little pieces. You can't piece part something completely out. Not to say that it can't be done, but it's just not the wisest way to handle the finality of the case, especially a case where that's homicide and that you're going to be pursuing murder charges after someone. So it's very serious. There's a lot of talking about, is this the right thing, if we're headed the right direction? Because we're going to take this to the grand jury and 12 people who don't know any of these people, who don't know all of the facts that we've talked about tonight, and even the deeper facts. I mean, this case goes on and on and on in pages and pages and pages. But you're going to tell your story to those 12 people, and those 12 people are going to decide, yeah, this guy, he did this, and he needs to answer for this.
So what year was this? Because Detective Rayleigh, he wrote a massive affidavit laying everything out, presented it to the grand jury, and they chose to indict. What year was that?
Oh, so that's in 2012, late of 2012 on into 2013 is when all of the written documents were being produced and the story is being told in chronological order, and the facts of this case are being laid out. And I'm going to tell you, reading it's not like that you read this document and it goes, Leland Neal needs to be tried for the murder of Carol Neal. It's not that. It involves a lot of Tony Sawyer. Mm-hmm. and to say, here's how Tony fits into this puzzle as well, because Leland testified. We talked about that Tony was later charged with tampering with physical evidence, went to jail for 5 years for that. But Leland Neal testified at his trial. And so that's also important, because in the trial, they asked Leland Neal about the insurance money. Did you benefit from the death of Carol Neal? And he said he did. He got $50,000, and then also $1,200 a month in Social Security benefits for him and the two boys. And so that's something that's pertinent to this case as well.
So they choose to indict. It goes to the grand jury. The grand jury chooses to indict, and you think, okay, cut and dry, we're going to get him. But Leland is gone.
See, the magical part of all of this is, where is Leland Neal now? Because we'd like to talk to Leland about this. And so in 2008 is the last time that anybody hears from Leland Neal. Leland is crossing over into Mexico. It's documented in 2008. That's how we know that when it happened. And that's the last time that he is seen or heard from then. So So that's even before all of this happened. And it was very close to the time that, just a few years after the skull piece was found, the car vanishes, these other problems starts falling apart. This case starts unraveling very slowly, but it starts unraveling. And so that's the last time he's seen or heard from. And we just don't know what took place then.
So 2008, he's spotted going into Mexico. 2012, this indictment comes. And then you could say a big break happens in 2014.
Yeah, that's what's so funny about the day in 2014. It was in March. And I remember it. I was, now I'm working at the Bowling Green Police Department, have been for 7 or 8 years, and know this case exists and follow this case and kept up with what were reported to be the facts of this case. And no one thinks that Leland Neal is ever going to surface again. He crossed into Mexico in 2008, hadn't been seen since. Here it is, 2014. And we get a phone call from the Mexican officials. And Leland has been involved in a crime in Mexico with 2 other men. They robbed a place called a Super Six. Mm-hmm. And that's just a business there in a small town. And as the officials there are investigating that case, Leland's name surfaces because it's told in the facts of that case that there was a man with them that spoke English. And so they did some investigating. They figured out that the guy's name was Lee Neal. Once they started looking into who Lee Neal was, they realized this guy has a murder warrant out of the United States. And they find him, and we almost got a play-by-play as to they found him in where he was staying, and just pretty much went in and arrested him there and called and said he's in custody.
So the Mexican officials arrest him, and he's brought back over the border into Texas, and he's held at the Harris County Detention Center in Houston. And then the Bowling Green police traveled to Texas.
We did. We sent 2 detectives down there just to see, because you want to put someone in front of someone else and talk. Mm-hmm. And, we have to take into consideration that they have to be Mirandized. They have rights, and we have to understand that. And we believe in that and make sure that they understand exactly what those rights are. So we talked to him about that. We wanted to ask him if he wanted to talk to us about the disappearance and murder of Carol Neal, and he did not want to talk about it.
So he's brought back to Bowling Green and, of course, charged with murder. Of course, as it is with most cases, it takes a little bit of time to get to trial. But about a month before he's set to go to trial, Leland accepts a plea.
Yeah, he does. And this is the part of you always wonder, why are pleas accepted? Why, because we know that if we took this to trial, we could get a whole lot more time, maybe even the death penalty, or we don't know what. And so the risk of the unknown is oftentimes what drives a plea. And it drives a plea from both sides, because he may not want to take his chances in a court once that the facts of this case come out. And the reality is, he doesn't know what we know. We're not required to disclose that. So, So he's not sure what the police are coming at him with, or the Commonwealth Office is going to be coming at him with. And so he does take a plea. Now, it's really important to know that most of the time when someone has a family member that is killed at the hands of another, people want to know why, or people want to know how, or they have lots of questions. And so I think that in this particular case, it's a big deal to find out what happened, because if you think what we are up to at this point in time, all that we have left of Carol Neal is part of her skull. And the rest of her has never been found, even to this day. So there's a lot of questions there.
So as part of his plea deal, he got a reduced sentence from murder to first-degree manslaughter, first-degree bail jumping on some cases that are unrelated that happened in another county and flagrant non-support. But as part of his plea, he had to, in court, say why he killed Carol Neal.
Yes. And so his statement in court was that he went to his wife's house on November the 10th in 1998 to discuss their pending divorce and child support cases. Now, we know that they were scheduled to be in court on the 12th, but this is on the 10th. Leland Neal says the two of them got into an argument that led to a physical altercation that resulted in Carol Neal's death.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Ronnie, because when I was looking into this, they got into an argument about her seeing someone else.
Yeah, that came into play actually more than once because Leland had learned of Tony Sawyer, told and confronted Carol, told her that he knew about him and that he knew it was more than friends. He said he had sources that they were more than friends, but there's really no evidence ever to suggest anything other than that. But yeah, that came up and was in Leland's mind, I'm sure, was very important.
So Leland has been in prison now since 2016. He will be in prison. Is there a possibility of parole?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question, and obviously we're not consulted about that, and so you know I don't know how things will go and what will happen at this point in time. Obviously, the family and anyone related associated with this case would hope that there would never be a chance that he would see the outside world again.
Ronnie, earlier you mentioned in Tony's case that Leland actually served as a witness. Was that as a witness for the prosecution to like confirm about the evidence tampering, or? Yeah,
that's an interesting point because I would love to go and read the entire transcript of that trial. It would take a long time to do that, but I really wonder what they were trying to do because, quite frankly, I think that there was some insinuation that maybe you did this and maybe you need to try to answer some questions as to, first of all, how this blood got in this room that that Tony Sawyer tampered with. And so I think that there was a lot of maybe we can go on a fact-finding mission here in a court trial. And lots of times in court cases, the court will hear something very minor, but they will almost try you for murder in a case. So in a courtroom. So yeah, there was lots of questions asked about this. And I think those were just fact-finding missions.
You get somebody under oath, it's always an opportunity to learn something.
Exactly. It's either you're going to learn something or you're going to, they're going to perjure themselves. It's something that you learned later. So those statements are remembered, and of course they're memorialized in video and written both. So they're kept, even that he would have to answer for those statements again in another trial.
Ronnie, why did Tony feel the need to walk into this scene and spend almost 2 hours cleaning this, what we now know is a crime scene? So much, in fact, that when police arrived, shortly after police arrived, a Stanley steamer truck showed up because they were going to clean the carpets.
Yeah, we arrived on the scene to take this missing persons report and walk into what we quickly realized is a very bad crime scene. In fact, that we found bone fragments and parts of teeth later on, that it didn't take very long to find those to be able to see that was in this scene as well. And while we're standing there, hadn't been there very long, a Stanley steamer truck pulls up and he's there to clean the carpet. And so he'd been called. So you back up and let's talk about the mentality of Tony Sawyer. He even called himself the clean guy, that he was kind of a neat freak. And other people around him would say the same thing, that he was constantly cleaning, did not like to have things out of order, and really sort of said that he had OCD and couldn't handle messes. And so in his mind, that's what this was. This was a mess. He needed to clean it up, and that's what he was set out to do. And so getting it cleaned up was his priority, not believing that he was standing in the middle of a crime scene. even to the point that, proof of this is we've got to figure out, well, is that real? I mean, is that really what he's trying to do? But we talked to people that were in charge of him while he was in jail, and they said that while in jail, he was cleaning corners that had never seen the light of day. He was cleaning them with a toothbrush. They said that if we let him clean all of the time, he would absolutely clean every minute of every day.
So October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And after researching this case, Carol actually had made a couple of calls against Leland and even had filed a domestic violence order against Leland. And it is tragic and so important that people realize that there is an opportunity for help. The numbers are staggering. Even in 1998, there were about 1 million violent crimes that were committed against people by their current or former spouses or boyfriends or girlfriends. In 1998, women were nearly 3 out of 4 victims in the 1,830 murders attributed to intimate partners, which I know Bowling Green, we are a smaller community, but it happened here.
Yes, we're not immune to it, and you can't for 1 minute believe that no matter where you live, that this isn't happening. And something that is so important is because at the end of this case, what we found was that people were coming forward saying, "Gosh, I knew that they were having problems. I knew that she had confided in me that he at one point in time knocked her down during a fight and she broke her foot, and another time she had a black eye, and so all of the things were happening, but she was denying them as well. But outside people looking in could see easily that this is domestic violence, and no one wants to ever believe that it's going to turn or come to this. But the truth of it is, this all happened inside of a year. I mean, this developed, escalated, and ended so quickly, all in the same calendar year, and that's scary.
Ronnie, what would you say to someone who is in a situation, and I know that you've gone out on calls and you've seen evidence, but without that person wanting to initiate charges, you can't do much. What would you say to someone that's in a situation and they're terrified and they don't know what to do?
It is like telling a person who's literally floating in the middle of the ocean that there is land nearby. They can't see it. They can't believe it. And you talk to people who are in tumultuous relationships and you say, get help, get out, talk to a friend, figure out something to do. We'll help you. They can't see it. They just can't see beyond the situation that they're in. One, they love the person, right? They wouldn't be in the relationship if they didn't love this person. Two, maybe there's a financial portion of this that they can't make it on their own without this person providing a living for them. Three, it's moral support. This is a person that they have no one else, and this is someone that they are in a relationship with, albeit a terrible relationship and a dangerous relationship, but they just can't find their way out, and they can't find or figure out how they're going to get help. They can't see themselves in any other way except the relationship that they're trapped in now.
If they call you and they are terrified, but they need help, how can they, even if that person is standing right next to them, how could they tell you without endangering themselves?
Well, I'm going to tell you, being a police officer, we can almost walk into a domestic violence scene and look around and figure out what happened, and nobody even has to say. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth. You can, just because of having dealt with it so many times, you look around and you say, okay, these things are broken. She has these injuries, or he has these injuries. I pretty much can figure out what went on here. And so one of the very first things that we do as police officers, we walk into we call it a family disturbance or domestic violence. we separate the people. And I mean, when we talk about separating where they can't hear or see each other, and we put one officer with one and one officer with the other, and then you get those stories of what happened. And then you trade. The two officers switch people, and then they get the story again. And then the two officers come together and say, what happened? And if the stories don't line up, we go back to work again, and we start trying to figure out what actually took place. And to go back a little bit to say, what do you tell someone? I have begged people, please go, please leave, please stop this. And there are places that we can direct you to that will give you immediate help and solve this problem right now. And and I know friends of these people have done the same thing. It's heart-wrenching to see that you want to be about this, because it's clear as day to you as a friend. It's clear as day to a police officer, but to someone who's trapped in it, they just can't find their way out.
And no victim blaming, because if you've been in that situation, like you said, you do feel helpless, you do feel hopeless. I guess all we can do is keep encouraging.
Yes, you cannot look at a person and say, this is your fault, because there's no difference in the domestic violence that they just experienced and then you standing there telling them that this is their fault. Because then all that does is makes the violence for them meaningful to the point that they feel like it is justified towards them. And so that's the very last thing that we want people to believe, is that one, you deserve this, and two, that you have to take it. And neither of those are true. And so to try to get through to people to say, you need to, there is another way, there is a better way, we can help you, just let me help you. But you were right to say that sometimes people don't want out, they don't want help, and to force people, you can't do that. The law just doesn't. The law allows you to help, but only to a certain extent. And at some point in time, they have to be the victim, and sometimes people don't want to be victims.
And I think that's, from an outsider's perspective, the metaphor that you used of somebody trapped in the ocean, surrounded by water, and telling them there's land nearby. That is a very powerful visual to understand, or at least have some empathetic touch point. That I think that was just a really powerful, well-placed metaphor, because it gave me an entirely new perspective.
Yeah.
Ronnie, I know we have several people locally that listen, but there's people all over that listen. So I want to give out the 800 number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. The website is thehotline.org. It's 800-799-SAFE, which is 7233. And I know a lot of times people are afraid to even look up help because of search histories. But the beautiful thing about this website is they have a giant X where you can hit escape, and they do as much as possible to keep that website out of your search history. So you can log on and research and try to get help. Again, it's thehotline.org or 800-799-SAFE.
Those are great websites and numbers to go to, because a lot of times when the police show up, it's really ugly. It's already ugly, and people feel like, well, who called the police? And there's going to be trouble after the police leave, and you better tell them. So if we're not involved, you can go search for that help on your own, but don't ever think that that's where you can go to be safe. We can help you be safe. And so, yes, calling that hotline, absolutely. If that's what you feel like is going to help you through, do that. If you need the police, call the police. Even if it's just the non-emergency number, or you drive down the street and you see a police officer, and just some way let them know, I'm in a bad situation. Just reaching out makes a big difference.
Well, Ronnie, we have thoroughly enjoyed having you on tonight. We thank you for joining us. This case was, this was a wild ride, because it was a span of 15 years?
Yeah, it took a long time. it's one that you look at and you say, well, we know who did this. Is this thing ever going to be solved? And, well, do you really know who did it? I mean, did you put the guy in prison for one other charge and he needs to go back for another one? I mean, it was, you could have flipped the coin halfway through this thing and probably been right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ronnie, we hope you'll come back and join us again. I know
I'd love to.
Probably satisfied because he likes when we have a good conclusion on a case.
I need closure.
Yeah, lots of people need closure. You need to, people need to learn what happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is a good case for that.
Well, Ronnie, we thank you so much. And, well, I would say I'll be seeing you around, but, COVID.
Yeah. I'll email you around.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right. Thanks, Ronnie.
Yep. See you guys.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of A-Side, B-Side Podcast. We really hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, we'd appreciate it if you'd head on over to Apple and leave us a rating or a review. And make sure you come back next Friday for another episode.